Between the twisted stars, the plotted lines, the faulty map that brought Columbus to New York. Between the east and
we're
west.
doing it.
All right, for good or for ill. Yeah, right. They're not booing.
They're not booing. They're saying Lou. Because this week, what are we doing, Barry?
New York by Lou Reed. His return to guitar, strictly guitar-oriented, simple songs about his home, New York City.
About New York.
Yeah, it's New York City. He can call it New York. It's not about upstate New York.
Because I'm from New York.
Right.
I grew up in Queens, Bayside, Queens, and believe me, I know nothing about the New York that is on this record.
Nope.
I know nothing about that.
Nope. Right.
I got to see a little bit later on in the night, because in the early 90s it was still this record came out in January 1989.
Yep.
And he was 47 years old when he
Wow.
wrote this record, when this record came out, which, when you think about it, a lot of really great artists, songwriters, you figure once they're in their 40s, that's it, they're out.
Done.
And then he comes out with this goddamn record.
It's like those Dylan, Time Out of Mind, and the two records, one that came out in '97 and one that came out in 2000.
Right. His later,
Love and Theft.
Right. Which are great, unbelievable,
absolutely fantastic.
But these guys are insane outliers to that, because usually
True.
that never happens. And it's funny that you bring up Bob Dylan, because there are definitely
of course.
Yes, there are. And then I didn't realize that Lou Reed actually, I read some interviews with him where he basically said he didn't care much for music, for like modern music, poppy music.
Right.
But the one thing he would listen to the later, especially like the later Bob Dylan records, and he always respected him as a writer, as a wordsmith, and as a poet. So it's like,
I think the thing he probably also likes about Dylan is that Dylan is really just going to do whatever he wants.
Right.
And even if it sucks, and he's made some shitty records, he's uncompromising.
Right,
it's like,
exactly.
This is what I'm going to do. And,
right.
Okay,
so he did grudgingly respect him, although there is, I don't know if you caught it, but there is a pretty fierce diss on Dylan in one of the songs in this record.
I did not.
Okay, so
all right,
there is.
When we get there, point it out.
I will, of course, definitely I will. So me and Barry and I decided when we, last week we said, all right, we're going to do New York Lou Reed, and then at some point I was going through the lyrics, and I messaged Barry, I said,
there's too many.
We can't do. Well, I say we can't do this in an hour.
No.
It's impossible. And then Barry said, "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing." Yeah. So this is going to be part one
of a two-part episode.
Because anyone, I think anyone who is listening to this podcast, who's into, some of the music that we've done already, some of the records we've covered, know this record.
Right.
I've seen it on a lot of people's lists, like a lot of people I know, friends.
Yeah, it's listed as, people will say this is his greatest solo album. I'm not gonna say that he's got a greatest solo album that I can name.
But
this is
it has been said. But it has been said. And this for him was like sort of a resurgence, because he was in the. All right, let's give the backstory for those who were maybe born on Mars or grew up
you mean the
Mormon in a Mormon, and don't know that he had he had a band.
Right, probably the most influential rock band on
ever.
If you're listening to this podcast, it's the most influential rock band ever. If you're listening to another podcast, it's probably the Beatles.
Right, right, exactly. Okay, that's good. That's great.
Brian Eno. He lists to two influences, major influences. It's the Velvet Underground and Captain Beefheart. So,
okay.
So the Velvet's first album came out in early '67, late '66, and it was it had songs about New York, about drugs, about scoring drugs, about people who were into S&M, about people who were just freaks.
Right. And things, so things that people weren't writing songs about then. But it's funny, Lou. I read another thing where Lou Reed said he was surprised in a way that it was so shocking and everything because people were writing about it already.
Sure.
There was, in books, and that's all
the
people
Velvet
wrote
Underground
about.
is a book. The Velvet Underground is a book about S&M, and that's where they got the name.
Oh,
of the
okay.
book.
I did not know
Cale.
that. I didn't know that.
Ian-
So he was, So he said it's already out there. It's literary. People write about this all the time.
Sure.
It's just people, why aren't they writing about it in
Pop
rock and roll?
music or rock and roll, sure.
So
but he had been a
did-
songwriter at a place called Pickwick Records.
Right. Writing these like weird, like novelty
hits
songs.
that were a lot of them were just terrible. I mean, there's not that the difference between if you listen to the Pickwick stuff and then you try to make a leap to the Velvet Underground.
It's hard.
Well, the thing to understand was that he and John Cale and Sterling Morrison were living together in this apartment, and John Cale had been involved in experimental music, and John Cale's a Welshman and one of the two surviving Velvets, and they started writing these songs together. So you can hear some of the early demos are really funny. They sound like "Waiting for the Man."
Yeah.
My favorite rock and roll song of all time. Just so I can get that out there.
Right.
If there's a number one.
And one of the greatest rock
and roll songs of all time.
Yeah, of all time.
And they started recording these in a hotel room they were living in. And it sounds like a country blues, and they do like 12 takes of it, of this country blues song, but then it morphs over time, and then the crucial step for the song "Waiting for the Man," there's a couple of early recordings of it, and then they go and record it one more time, and he changes the words from "I'm waiting for the man" to "I'm waiting for my man."
Yeah.
And that's kind of like it crosses this threshold into and then now it's the greatest rock and roll song of all time.
Right.
So and then Lou, then Cale, they make "White Light, White Heat," which is an absolutely blistering, mind-blowing, and seminal rock recording. In some ways, a more interesting record to me than the first Velvet's album. I love the first Velvet's record, but "White Light, White Heat" is just excoriating. It's like drinking paint thinner and setting your hair on fire.
Which is Barry. If anyone knows Barry, that's something you would enjoy.
Right. And, and then Cale leaves, and Lou makes the third Velvet's record, which is this very mellow, hushed affair.
Loaded, without...
And then Loaded.
Oh, Loaded. Oh, so what was before Loaded?
The third album is the Velvet Underground.
Oh, the Velvet Underground, that's right.
Candy Says, and I'm Set Free.
Okay. Yeah, see, Barry's more of a Velvet historian than me. I mean, I really do love the Velvet Underground. I do. I got into them a little later, but by 70, 71, they were done.
They were toast,
and then the funny thing that I just read that I didn't realize was that he moved back in with his parents.
Yeah.
After the Velvets, and he got a job working for his dad as a typist.
Right. And he actually had this woman that he was involved with whose story has surfaced relatively recently.
Yes, right.
And
he ended up marrying for a little bit. They were together for years, but they married less than a year.
And she was sort of this normal, regular woman who just, I guess, grounded him and provided him with honest feedback and stability. And then, Lou started getting involved in the hard drugs again, and I think that's what put her off. And they went through
so they didn't last, but he did. So he signed a recording contract with RCA Records in 71, and he did his first solo
record,
album,
which is an okay record. It's got a lot of Velvet's leftover stuff on it. It's not a masterpiece.
Not like Transformer. I would say the early stuff, like, and Transformer was almost the record I was going to pick for this.
Yeah.
But it could have been. We definitely could have done.
It's
Transformer.
way back there. It's
but
a
it's
long
also,
time ago.
I feel like it's more. There's more songs that are just like really known on Transformer.
Absolutely, yeah.
Walk on the Wild Side.
Sure.
A Perfect Day. So
right.
I
Satellite of Love.
Right. So there was probably
We could gush
because it's a gushable record, but it came out in 72. So when you think about it, okay, so that, and then so Lou put out a bunch of records, and some, and then in the 80s he put out New Sensations, which you're right. Barry told me, he said, listen to it again because it's actually not that bad, and I listened to it, and it actually is. It is good. It's got some good stuff, and then Mistrial after, which is it was weird. It sounded like a 80s record, and so so those records came out. So the
Those
thing,
are sort of his late 80s record.
right, late 80s. So when you think about it, in 1989, no one was sitting around waiting
No.
for a Lou Reed record.
No.
Like, when is
No.
Lou going to come out with?
No.
So this
It's,
record,
him.
right? So when this record came out,
Right.
it must just have been like,
Yeah, with
okay.
the cover, it's got it looks like it's like, oh, this looks kind of serious.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's just called New York. And
New York.
if anyone could call their record New York,
It's
I
him.
would say, yeah, it's
Right,
Lou Reed. And
right.
this was Lou Reed saying, "Fuck you, I'm still Lou fucking
right.
Reed."
I need to say something. I have something I need to say.
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah. And it's
and
like
he
so-
does.
And this is I wrote down. This is like his angry love letter to New York,
It is.
to New York City.
And musically, it's very austere. It's two guitars, bass, and drums, and vocals.
Right,
And
which he wanted to do. Which that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to go back to basics.
Right.
And so let's. Before we go in further, we have to touch the stone because you have an actual Velvet Underground connection. So 6
Really?
degrees of separate. Yes, you do. I know
Yeah,
you
okay.
do, Barry.
All right.
So you might as well tell.
I'll tell my story.
Who you have played? 'Cause
I've probably told the story before on the podcast. And
I
we
don't
just
think.
forgot.
Well,
And
who
not in
knows?
depth.
Maybe-
Okay, so in about 1980, and maybe I was a senior in high school, maybe after that, my friend and person whose name appears on this podcast a lot, Billy Taylor from Orlando.
Billy, I feel like at this point I know.
You're
Billy
one day we're gonna have Billy on the podcast,
Yeah,
and it's
got
gonna
it.
be it's gonna be quite an episode.
All right, awesome.
And Billy Taylor called me from a record show in Orlando. He goes, "Hey man, there's this guy," and I'm doing a pretty good Billy Taylor imitation now. hey man, there's this guy down here, MC Kostik, and he runs the Velvet Underground Appreciation Society, and he puts out What Goes On magazine. You should come down here. So I drive to the record show, and we meet this guy and chat him up, and he seems like a super cool guy. And then Billy and I end up, Mike lives in Stewart, and so we would drive, getting Billy's Datsun B210 on like a Friday afternoon and drive down and stay with Kostik in Stewart. And Mike is a record collector, still is, and he had at the time, I think he had like 60,000 records in his house. The walls were just lined with records.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
one of those guys.
Yeah, one of those guys, but with extremely hip and extremely good taste, and also a huge Velvets fan. Mike actually saw the original Velvets twice.
Oh, wow.
He saw them once with Cale and once without Cale. He's from Amherst, Mass, or from around Amherst, Mass, Greenfield, around there. He also, this is just one more little Mike Kostik thing. Mike Kostik is visible in the Woodstock movie. He and a friend hitchhiked to the Yaskers farm with a bag of Doritos, and neither one of them are drug takers or have ever been. And so they're there with all these acid stoned hippies, and they stayed to see Jimi Hendrix. When Jimi Hendrix is playing the Star Spangled Banner, he lifts up his guitar, and we were watching the video, and Mike goes, "Okay, look, I'm going to pause it right there." And he points right through the crook in Jimmy's arm, and he presses play, and there he is on the audience. He's nodding his head just like he does at every show I've ever been to him with. So Mike and his wife at the time went and hunted down Maureen Tucker, Mo Tucker, the drummer for the Velvets, who was living in Douglas, Georgia, and she was working for Walmart as data entry because she is one of the fastest typists on earth.
Really?
She has one of those. She can type like 200 words a minute or some insane thing. So, and they did a bunch of interviews with her, asking her about, stuff that nobody had ever asked her about, and they were cassettes. And I ended up moving in with them for 6 months and transcribing all that stuff. But in the summer of '86, before I moved in with them, they wanted to record a record with Mo, and so Jad Fair from Half Japanese, famous in underground circles.
Yep.
Maryland, DC noise rock guy, and Jad Fair was a singer, and then I played bass and guitar, and then Kate Messer, Mike's girlfriend at the time, played guitar, and Mo played drums and sang, and then Jad sang. I don't think maybe Mo didn't sing in that first one. We recorded this EP in a garage in Orlando with the broken air conditioner, and it was like 300 degrees, and
wow.
it's a very raw recording. We do some Velvet songs Mr. Rain and Guess I'm Falling in Love, and we do a Jimmy Reed song, and we do an instrumental that I wrote. And so,
so were you like at that point? Were you starstruck, a little starstruck that you were playing with Maureen Tucker?
Of course,
okay, you were because you were already.
But Mo's she's a odd character, and as people now, has very strong political beliefs, and which is not something I really understood at the time. Mo's a very serious, very, very serious, strict Catholic, and so it all comes down to the
which is ironic. It's ironic, especially the song, because she does play on this record. She plays on 2 songs.
Yeah,
and Lou
sure.
Really wanted her to be part of the record,
sure.
and she plays on 2 songs.
She just I think she recognized that those guys were, that Lou was an artist, and that she was just going to pretty much put up with whatever from Lou.
And Lou he also respected the fact that he said, like, no one else plays drums like Maureen Tucker.
Primitive. Yeah, very primitive.
She's got what she does, no one else does.
Well,
so
they would
definitely
do, when they would do on White Light, White Heat, there's a song called Sister Ray, and Sister Ray's long, and it's when they played it live, she plays brutally hard and metronomically steady for 15 minutes.
Right.
And while the band is just doing this, this just wild over the top, and the lyrics are totally insane about shooting transgender people, in an apartment, drug addicts dealing drugs, and they murder somebody, and they're complaining about the carpet getting. So Mo,
but you hit the nose when you said primitive. That's what it is. It's got like that primitive. Yes,
it does.
And all right, so she's on this, but the main drummer on this record was actually the guy that kind of co-produced it. Didn't really have a.
Well, he played with Lou he played with Lou for quite a while.
Fred Mayer, and he was young.
Marr.
He was 24 years old this time, and he started playing with Lou when he was much younger, like 18, I think.
Right, when Lou had a band in the early '80s with
Quine, with
Robert Quine,
who
from Richard Hell and the Voidoids, just a guy that's got
unbelievable.
There'd be a giant statue of him in front of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and fuck all those other guys, basically.
But all right, but the guitar player that played on this record, Mike Rathke, was Lou Reed wanted him to play in it, and he was known to be a very, really easygoing guy. And there's a great Robert Quine quote. He referred to Mike Rathke as Lou's lapdog.
Quine and Lou, it did not end well with Quine and Lou, because Quine had a really acerbic personality, just like Lou, and so for a while it worked.
Oh yeah, but then it was like oil and water. It didn't work out. And Lou, I think at this point Lou was sober already. He'd become sober.
Right.
So this guy was sober too. Right. So I think he was just of the mindset. So it was all right. So besides Lou Reed, there was the guitar player Mike Rathke.
Yeah.
There was the drummer I mentioned for most of the song, Fred Maher, and then Rob Wasserman.
Unbelievable bass player.
Unbelievable. And playing this weird
upright,
6-string electric upright bass.
Totally intimidating instrument that you're like, oh.
And you look and you said, how does, you look at some live videos and you go, is he really playing? Yeah. Is that him playing it? It's really unbelievable. Great. He makes it look effortless, and it's just like unbelievable. Yeah, and it's basically like Barry said, it's a 6-string stand-up electric bass. And
it sounds incredible.
Amazing. And
I guess if nobody told you that it was an upright bass, fretless bass, you wouldn't necessarily think. Because Lou had Fernando Saunders play with him,
who was also a fretless bass player,
but played like it was like a fretless jazz or P bass or whatever.
Right.
Fernando Saunders was a jazz bass player. He played with Jan Hammer and so forth, so he could really play as well. So Lou had some really stellar talent in the bass department.
Oh yeah, definitely. And he, this record, as natural as it sounds, it's basically just 2 guitars, bass, and drums, the whole record.
Yeah.
But I was reading about the recording technique, and they said that the guitars were recorded first, because Lou was obsessed with the sound of. He wanted the guitars to sound a certain way and to just sound really good, and they do on this record sound good.
But they're very natural. They're very
clean. Natural.
They're not just.
But did you know they recorded the guitars recorded first without a click track, and then the vocals, and then the bass, and then the drums. He put this guy put the drums on. I know,
not know that.
And then when you listen to it, you would not think that there's one or two songs that they sort of played together live, but most of the songs were done that way with the guitars.
And one thing I enjoyed besides listening to the album this week was there's also an entire live recording of the entire album.
Right.
You can see it on YouTube. Just search New York Live, Lou Reed.
That's it.
And it's the same band and it's the same songs, but it's done start to finish, but it's in a live setting and it's just a different perspective. But it's also great. So you can just A/B
really
those
great.
two things and really enjoy it.
And also in the liner notes to the record, he specifically says that he directs the listener to hear the whole album
start to finish
in one sitting, like it's a book or a movie.
Right.
And it's funny, it is kind of, when you think about it, it is kind of arrogant of someone to say that, but for this record, it's so fitting because
what
it is,
Well, that reminds me of someone who's in the news this week is David Lynch, and David Lynch's original DVDs you would get them, they have no chapters, so once you press play in the movie, you can't skip forward a chapter.
Oh, okay.
You either have to.
You gotta watch the movie.
You gotta watch the movie, which is kind of evil, but whatever.
No, well, hey, he's
an
artiste, yes.
Right.
And then also, so Dion sings backups, very memorable backups, because I guess Lou is a big fan of Dion.
Oh yeah, and on the live thing, there's some amazing doo-wop stuff at the
there are.
So,
and the drummer sings really good. He sings, and it is. It's just
And Lou's a doo-wop fan, which is that's
right. Exactly, that's his roots. That's what he loved. And it's so funny when they're doing that. You see live. Lou is a man that rarely smiles, but he's got that. But he'll have that little smile on his face.
Jovial is not the word you would ever use to describe Lou.
Oh my God, no.
The late Lou Reed.
Definitely not.
He's been dead, what, 5 years now?
Wow,
so
has it been that long?
2013, 2000, it's been a long time.
I guess so. So, let's see. What else could we say? I guess after we take our first break, we'll get into the songs themselves. This is going to be part one of our
I've got my lyrics. This is the most lyrically dense album. That's the reason we're doing a two-part one.
We had to. There was no way we couldn't. There's so much to talk about, and it's so great. It's so well written and so lyrical, and there's so much he throws out, like just so many, and some of it can sound dated in a way, just because of the names he puts out were definitely names that everyone knew about in the 80s, but it's not really, as a whole, it's not dated.
Some of it is very, very...
Oh my God, some of it's like unbelievable topical. Like you wouldn't believe, but
we'll get there.
Right.
There's a couple of characters where you're going to go, oh...
Right, exactly.
I know those guys.
Exactly. So I...
Song one.
Yeah, it starts out with Romeo Had Juliet.
Romeo Had Juliet.
And it starts out, which a lot of records I think we've done, they have the false start. Song to, and this has the false start because it starts sort of... in the middle of it, you could tell it sounds like
okay, we're rolling.
We're rolling. Then it starts, and it gives it starts the record off to where it has kind of a loose feel, kind of a loose, thrown off feel to it, and this song is just like a poem, like an evocative poem about the seedy, but Lou always managed to find the beauty in the seediness of New York, especially New York.
Of course. The thing about Lou was that he's not judging those people for what they're doing.
Right, exactly.
And that's what people find shocking is that he sings about these characters and he does not cast
judgment. He doesn't judge it.
Later on, he passes judgment on politicians.
Exactly, he does. But with
people.
these people, he speaks of them with fondness, affection and fondness. And the main characters in this are a guy named Romeo Rodriguez and Juliet Bell. Yes, that's right. And it starts out, Romeo Rodriguez squares his shoulders and curses Jesus. Runs a comb through his black ponytail.
Yeah, he's thinking of his lonely room, the sink that by his bed gives off a stink, then smells her perfume in his eyes, and her voice was like a bell, Juliet Bell. And then he's describing street scenes and their More about Romeo. A diamond crucifix in his ear is used to help ward off the fear that he has left his soul in someone's rented car. So Romeo is probably turning tricks for money.
Right. But he paints such a picture of these people with these words. It's like, it's unbelievable. You could picture them when he's talking about them and when he's describing them, and it's just like so beautiful.
And Romeo is a tough guy, and Juliet is. I don't think he doesn't talk about Juliet as much as he does about Romeo in this. He talks about her perfume.
But did you notice there's a little bit almost where I almost got the feeling of a DIY abortion involved in here, because he says inside his pants he hides a mop to clean the mess that he has dropped into the life of Lithesome Juliet Bell. You know, so he specifically says into the life of Lithesome, and he hides him up, and then he says the perfume burned his eyes, holding tightly to her thighs, and then something flickered for a minute, and then it vanished and was gone.
Now, when I the thing about the mop in his pants, I wasn't even sure what Lou's talking about. Maybe I missed with the mop. What is it?
Well, that's what he hides him up to clean the mess that he has dropped.
Right.
So it could just be more lurid than that. It could just be he dropped the mess in her and he's got to clean it up. So it could just be like a handkerchief.
But at the end, the final verse, the perfume burned his eyes, holding tightly to her thighs. Yeah, and something flickered for a minute, and then it vanished and was gone. I thought about that he felt love for her for a minute. Real love and affection. But then he went back to being to the street guy, Romeo Rodriguez.
Right.
And there's some violent imagery in this. The cop.
Oh, yeah, right.
The cop who died in Harlem. You think they'd get the warning? I was dancing when his brains ran out on the street, and I guess that's Romeo talking and bragging to his friends.
But he was probably an asshole cop, probably a dirty cop, so he was laughing.
And these guys are not saints.
No, they're not.
There's no saints on this, right?
Now, when he's talking about the book, he says, Manhattan sinking like a rock into the filthy Hudson. What a shock.
Yeah.
They wrote a book about it. They said it was like ancient Rome. That book, I believe he's talking about Tom Wolfe's Bonfire of the Vanities. Because I remember reading that in the 80s, the Bonfire of the Vanities. And this people have described this as a musical version of the Bonfire of the Vanities.
That I did not know.
Yeah. So that... but yeah, what a
great opener!
What a great opener!
Yeah, he's like he opens the curtain and it's like, okay, there's this. He presents you with this scene of New York. Here you go. Here's a real life scene, and it's taking place right now.
Right, and now I'm going to take you through all the characters. So we're going to take a little quick break in this part 1 of the Lou Reed New York episode, and we'll be back in a minute.
3 of the 6 people they were writing, campaigning for were released. And I got to talk to them. Their stories are so horrible. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, you read it in the papers, it's one thing, but listening to this mother tell you, like in Chile, Veronica Negra, like how her son was burnt up. And it's hard to believe over things that we wouldn't even dawn on us we had a problem.
Right. But so that was
I mean, like I'm bitching and moaning because my 2 words are taken out of Dirty Boulevard.
Right, and these people
over there, if you say hi, you're torpedoed.
Right. Okay. Well, I was curious about that. Also, a friend.
I mean, those people are out there. I mean, we're talking other world. Ayatollah land. I mean, those guys are really.
Solomon Rushdie. What do you think of that?
All right, we're back.
Well, I mean...
That record got me high. Oh, we didn't introduce ourselves before. That's Barry Stock.
That's Rob Elba, as if you didn't know already.
Right. But
Episode 15.
Episode 15, part 1. Side 1.
15A. Side 15A.
And I think we were so excited about this. I would say me and you were... I mean, if I'm going to list my favorite songwriters, Lou Reed is going to be right up there. It's probably like one of my all-time favorites.
Reed, Dylan, Neil Young, there's other ones, but those guys are not going. You're not going to top.
No, they're not. He's untouchable and
honest observations of people where you see, they give you a perspective you didn't have before.
Right, exactly.
And you're not going to get anywhere else.
That's right. And then we go, so we're on the second song now of New York, and the song is Halloween Parade.
Yeah,
how many records have we done that have had Halloween
a
in
lot.
the title?
Well, we're probably
right?
going to do another one too, so we'll probably do that one. It's a popular. If I do sort by Halloween in my iTunes songs, there's a lot of songs Halloween.
Right.
So we got anyway, Jello Biafra in his version of Halloween. But this one is a sad rumination.
It's very
And this
sad.
is when AIDS was really hitting New York hard.
Right.
And hitting the gay community in New York really hard.
Right.
And so
at first it sounds like an ode, like he's talking about a parade, like a Halloween parade, and all the
there's a
colorful
downtown
figures.
fairy singing out Proud Mary as she cruises Christopher Street, and some southern queen is acting loud and mean where the docks and the Badlands meet. So it's like Act 2. He opens the curtain again on another scene, New York
another scene, and these are his beloved, like the misfits, the transvestites, and everything. But as you get into the song, you realize he's talking about how a lot of them aren't the ones that aren't there anymore.
These are the ones that he's seen, but a lot of the ones he knows are gone.
That aren't there anymore.
Halloween is something to be sure, especially to be here without you. And we don't know exactly who the you is that he's talking about.
Right.
But
I'm sure he lost a lot of people that he knew during that time. Yeah. During the
and those were his. I don't know that much about Lou's personal habits. I haven't read any of the biographies and stuff. I know that he's a complicated character.
He's complicated, and from what I mean, basically he was married 3 times,
right?
And to women all 3 times. But he also had a
long-term lover that was
that
was a transgender, Sylvia.
Right.
Transgender
way before people even knew what that was or anything.
Yeah. Sylvia was a cross-dress or a cross-dressing man, and
he was a complicated.
And Sylvia appears in a lot of the songs.
Sylvia, who he was married to then, his wife at this time you're talking about.
Sylvia, right.
Sylvia Morales became Sylvia Reed, right? Because he had been married, and it seemed like he became sober, so he settled down a little. He stopped doing the hard drugs, and he did settle down, but he's still, so in this song, but he's still talking fondly about all these people he knew.
But there ain't no Harry and no Virgin Mary, and you won't hear those voices again. And Johnny Rio and Rotten Rita, you'll never see those faces again. They're gone. And I even remember him talking about the characters from Sister Ray and how they would go. He and Cale would go to Harlem to score drugs, and he said, those people are dead. He was sad. He said, they're not around anymore.
Right.
And
and he's singing about these marginalized people, desperate people, but you could tell he has a genuine affection for them.
But he's observing these new people that he's definitely missing the people that he used to see that he knew. Oh, hey, Lou.
It's sad. It's really
very
sad
song.
It is.
There's a girl from Soho with a T-shirt saying "I blow." She's with the Jive 5 2+3, and the girls for pay dates are giving cut rates or else doing it for free. No consolations, please, for feeling funky. I got to get my head above my knees, but it makes me mad. It makes me sad. And then I start to freeze. He actually talks about his head being on his knees way back on a song on White Light, White Heat. So he's used that before.
Oh, okay.
On I Heard Her Call My Name on White Light, White Heat. It's a song about a guy who goes crazy because his girlfriend's dead.
Oh.
And he's got I got my eyeballs on my knees. So that means his he's like curled up.
Right.
And Lou was gave, he had his parents treated him with electroshock therapy.
Yes, which is really horrible. It's horrible. They wanted to
his
shock the gay out of him,
cure his homosexuality.
And they went to this obviously a quack doctor. They said, "Well, this is what you got to do."
This is going to work.
This is kind of horrible.
Yeah,
there's some songs about that too.
There are.
"Kill Your Sons." That song, "Kill Your Sons," is pretty brutal.
There's a recently released thing called Live at the Matrix when it's the Velvets and there's a song called "I Can't Stand It," and it's a song about this guy living in New York by himself in an apartment, and Lou talks about waking up in the morning, and at the intro to the song he goes, I turn on the radio and the first thing the news has said is that some guy, it's minus 10 degrees, and some guy just, backed his truck over his baby in his driveway.
Oh, Jesus.
And you go, so I stayed inside, for a month or something like that. So Lou's not coming up with this stuff, he's not making this stuff up.
No.
His life was full of that kind of stuff.
And now we meet Pedro.
Yeah.
We meet Pedro
on the Dirty Boulevard.
Which it's crazy when you read the lyrics in this song and some of the things to think that this song was a hit. It was kind of like a hit.
It was.
It was a hit song, and it's a great song, but it's dark. It's a dark song. So we're introduced to Pedro, who lives out of the Wilshire Hotel. Mm-hmm. And it's another beautifully written, dark poetry.
Cardboard walls and a newspaper on his feet, and paying $2,000 of rent, a month of rent. Some landlord pissing himself and laughing.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing, but
give me you're hungry, you're tired, you're poor. I'll piss on them. That's what the statue of bigotry says.
Statue of bigotry.
And he mentions the statue of bigotry a few times on this record.
He does.
Your poor huddled masses. Let's club them to death and get it over with and just dump them on the boulevard.
Yeah.
It's like it's so brutal and stark, and the way he delivers it, he just sort of throws it away.
He was president in 1989.
Well, this was after Reagan, I guess. So we went through the Bush, we went
and
through
Giuliani is the mayor.
Yes,
and
Rudy Giuliani,
Rudy
and he saved some vitriol for Rudy Giuliani. He definitely has some vitriol for him, which is very ironic that Mr. Giuliani is in the news again. And he also mentions, well, we'll see. We'll get to it. Who else he mentions?
A small kid stands by the Lincoln Tunnel. He's selling plastic roses for $1. The traffic's backed up to 39th Street. The TV whores are calling the cops out for a suck. So
this was a hit song. It's crazy when you think about it.
TV. I mean, that's his second song, right? Because "Walk on the Wild Side" is also about a transvestite. That is,
right.
We're going to catch some flack for using terminology that's been outdated. We do our best.
In our defense, we do. Me and Barry, we're old, so we get a we're grandfathered in because we are old enough to be grandfathers. So.
And back at the Wilshire, Pedro sits there dreaming. He's found a book on magic in a garbage can. He looks at the pictures and stares at the cracked ceiling. At the count of 3, he says, "I hope I can disappear and fly away from the Dirty Boulevard. I want to fly away from the Dirty Boulevard." And then the song ends on, "I want to fly away." He wants out.
Yes, and this is the song that Dion comes in too. Yeah, Dion come in and he does this really pretty fly away. You got Dion, all of a sudden his voice coming in, this high voice, and it's really pretty at the end.
It's beautiful.
But that last, that verse, just when he's talking about Pedro finding the book of magic, to me, that's almost like, I look at that as like drugs. Like he discovers drugs, so he could take it and
for sure
disappear, because he wants to disappear from this horror of his life.
Yeah.
Which this movie is, I call it a movie because the song is like a Scorsese movie.
It is.
It basically is. It's like a Scorsese movie put to music, and we haven't talked much about the music thus far, but this song, the chorus, when he talks about the Dirty Boulevard, on the third measure they break it down, and then on the fourth one they just do 4 shots, bam, 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 and it's so great, it's so effective, it's just like really good, it kills.
But it's a very simple. he uses very simple motifs. Musically on this record.
Absolutely, absolutely.
More simple than intentionally has broken it down.
Well, yeah, because there's so much lyrics to get out, and so much to go out that you can't have all this crazy. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Endless Cycle.
Oh, the Endless Cycle. Another another down.
Uplifting.
This is not this is not a happy, uplifting record.
No, not so much.
It's really not. And this is Endless Cycle. It describes exactly what this song is about.
How these people end up where they are.
Yeah, this cycle of abuse and desperation that gets passed down from generation
to family.
generation.
Yeah, from generation to generation.
The bias of the father runs on through the son and leaves him bothered and bewildered. The drugs in his veins only cause him to spit at the face staring back in the mirror.
Self-hate, hate themselves.
Right. And he doesn't, even in this, he's not judging people that hard. He's just sort of matter of fact.
This is what happens.
This is what happens, right. This is the cycle.
The sickness of the mother runs on through the girl, leaving her small and helpless. Liquor flies through her brain with the force of a gun, leading her running in circles. So they can't see out of the situation they're in.
Right.
It just seems like they're in a maze, and they're just they're rats running around in a maze with no hope of escape.
And this song is very Dylan-like. I feel it could be like a later Dylan song. The way the music is kind of low key. It's low key music in the background, and it's also jaunty. It has like a little jauntiness to it that's totally undercut by the lyrics are
the
so
lyrical
bleak,
content, which is
but
brutal.
the music just sounds almost like jazzy, like a little jazzy.
It does.
And he's got the dark marriage joke at the end, which he does. His marriage ended pretty soon after this record.
Right. Well, just imagine being married to Lou. We should get it out of the way. The Lou Reed is just notorious for being an asshole.
Oh,
to pretty
notorious
much,
for being an asshole.
To pretty much everyone. In fact, I think this is a third episode where I'll mention the fact that there was a Q&A with Chris Friends of the Talking Heads, or it was on his Facebook feed, and people were asking questions of Seymour Stein from Sire Records through this intermediary, somebody that was there with Seymour, maybe at his apartment or whatever. And some poster chimed in and said, Seymour was the only person I never heard Lou Reed say anything bad about. So
that's it.
Pretty much everyone else on earth that he talked about, he had disparaging comments.
And he was notoriously hard to interview, like interviews he would give. And there was one, I read one interview, and someone asked, what would you say is the most common misconception about you? And obviously he wanted to say maybe that he's difficult, but Lou said, oh, I don't know. I would have to hear them. All right, so at the end of this song, there's a thing that's really dark about the marriage. He says, better than their mommy or daddy did, better than the childhood they suffered. He's talking about the parents now.
Yeah.
At least they're better than their mommy and daddy did, better than the childhood they suffered. The truth is they're happier when they're in pain. In fact, that's why they get married. Oh, my God.
Yeah, they want to find somebody with the same pain, same pains that they got. That's how they make it work. And then the next song, There Is No Time, which is up-temp. It's
metal. This song is like metal.
Chunka.
Yeah. It definitely stands out on the record because it's got most of the songs. The guitars are sort of
clean, not distorted.
Right, and really great sounding clean. But this one, they turn up the distortion. It's got the metal thing, and this is one of those songs. It's one of those songs, but done much better, where there's a lot of lyrics thrown out, just like listing things, listing different things.
I envy Lou Reed the fact that he could go out and, even though he wrote them, but he could remember every.
Well, it's funny you say that, because did you notice I was watching the Live New York thing, and he has. In this song in particular, he keeps glancing down.
He's got
lyrics. He's got lyrics there, and
because there's a lot of lyrics.
There's a lot of lyrics. I mean,
there's no repeat.
All these songs.
Well, there's no repeat.
Exactly right. There's no repeat. There's no chorus. It's just there is no time for what? There is no time for optimism. There is no time for endless thought. There is no time for my country, right or wrong.
Yeah.
Remember what that brought. And that's like, this is so in the now because he talks a lot about these empty patriotism and empty nationalism.
There's no time for celebration. There's no time for saluting flags. This is no time for inner searchings. The future is at hand. No time for phony rhetoric. No time for political speech. No time. This is the time for action because the future's within reach. Well, we're there, people.
Yeah, I know, right?
And he was back in the Bush, the early Bush. And I guess he probably wrote this during Reagan's presidency because Reagan's presidency ended in 1988.
Right.
And this was recorded in early 80, starting in January 1989.
Right.
So,
right.
And it's he's call to action. But he doesn't say... he doesn't tell you exactly what the action is.
No. Right? Yeah, he doesn't. He's leaving these. Yeah,
but it's definitely time for something to happen.
But there's no. Yeah, but there's no time for this. There's no time for this fake. Fake empty nationalism. There's no time for any of that. And also at the towards the end of the song, it's got some velvetish Sister Ray guitar, which you don't hear anywhere else on this record at all. Some like crazy, guitar
playing.
playing.
Lou's guitar playing, like Lou's soloing was usually had a sort of slightly out of control quality that you can usually go, oh, that's Lou soloing there.
Right, you could tell because Lou plays a lot of guitar on this record,
he does,
and I think he does, and you could tell the prettier, more stuff is the other guy.
Yeah, sure.
But as something that's got a little more of an edge, like
it's
a little
Lou,
wildness to it, it's Lou, and he ended up being a really great guitar player.
He was actually a great guitar player.
He was from the beginning. He was, you're
but
right. I shouldn't say he ended up.
Well, but people didn't realize how influential his guitar playing was going to be. And I guess I didn't even realize until later on that all of the Velvet stuff, all of the soloing is him. Like, it's Sterling Morrison doesn't play guitar solos in the Velvets. It's all Lou Reed. So if you hear some wild wailing thing, like I heard Her Call My Name, which has got this incredible, out of control guitar solo. One of Lester Bang's greatest guitar solo, listed as one of the greatest guitar solos of all time. It's Lou, and he's just. But it's not. It's kind of like where you have Neil Young's playing, where you go, Neil Young's playing is incredible, but he's not a virtuoso in the musical sense. He's a virtuoso in the sense that it's totally authentic and totally uniquely. You go, oh, that's Neil playing guitar.
Oh, right.
And it adds to the music in a way that's undeniable.
Yes. All right, so I think we're going to close down this part one of the Lou Reed New York, but the next episode, which will come next week, we still have, who do we have? We have the Virgin Mary, we have the NRA, we have Rudy Giuliani, we have Trump. We're going to have Trump
next week.
We have Bernie Getz.
Yeah.
We have Kurt Waldheim.
That's right. And the Pope.
We have the Pope. We have Jesse Jackson.
Yes, well, Jesse gets a whipping in this.
So, Louis Farrakhan, we have Oliver North, and we have Morton Downey.
I couldn't remember his name, but unless you were watching TV in the 80s.
Right.
He hasn't been on TV in a long time.
No.
But if you say Jerry Springer, people are like, yeah, I know who Jerry Springer is. But you go Morton Downey, that's been a long time ago.
Right. And I think most 80% of the names I just named are in one song. But
they are. But it's all New York.
It's all New York, and it's all Lou Reed, and we hope you guys are as excited about this record as obviously me and Barry are.
Yeah, man.
Kids. So that is Barry Stock.
That's Rob Elba.
And we will see you guys next week on that record.
Got Me High.